Good afternoon to the 4 or 5 people watching. It's just after 3 p.m. Sunday, September 6th, and this is weekly number 3. Looks like the consensus was the most useful and immediately obvious thing is to go over 8 cars per trainer, and hopefully we will cover quite a bit of ground. Let's switch over to VMware. It's finally working. I upped it to 4 cores and 4 gigabytes of RAM from 1 and 1, so hopefully that'll solve some of the stuttering issues. So the first thing to note is there are a bunch of different versions of 8 cars. 1.21 is the oldest that's still in circulation. 1.302 and 1.31 are actually the exact same and are the ones we'll primarily be using and the ones you should definitely stick to. 1.21 just really lacks some features. And 1.32 is significantly less stable but is useful for some things. So we'll get into this at the end, probably. Actually, we will use it for something at the end. So we'll get to it. Some of these kind of speak for themselves, but we'll go through them all anyway. Your park functions, if you are using a scenario which does not allow you to modify its open or closed state, can be done with the trainer. So for instance, anything that's been done without money in the scenario editor can be modified in this way if you want to. I think Extreme 97 does this, where he makes a workbench moneyless, and then you can use 8 cars to close it to keep guests from getting in. This I've never actually seen lit. I'm not sure what it does. Never been able to use it for anything. Never heard anyone talk about it. Vandalized park breaks all the benches, wrecks all the trash cans, and breaks all the lampposts. This does exactly what it says it does. If we do this, it should give us 0. This is a hard cap. As far as we know, at least until OpenRCT2 progresses rather significantly, there's no way of getting around this limit. Same thing goes for the sprite count, which is the number of objects placed, and the map data. This must take into account all information stored on all tiles, which is why there's already almost 8,000 pieces of information here, probably about the landscape. Next, we have invert land ownership. If you're having issues getting guests into a park, you've, for instance, maybe done something in the scenario editor and done own all land, you can run into issues where guests will get stuck at the edge. Inverting land ownership is a good start to correcting that. Usually messing around with these settings in this little group here can do a lot to help with that. Unowned rights does exactly what it says, and de-owned borderland is also a good one. That combined with hiding the park border, this removing the border fence, can be another workaround for the guests getting stuck problem. Changing the guest entry points basically just enables you to place the little blue squares with the arrows like you normally would be able to in the scenario editor, but you can do it while in a save game. These are also relatively self-explanatory, but they have sort of special behavior. They reset to the beginning of whatever you selected. So if we go in and see, this is sort of partway through March, and we add a month. It's actually taking us ahead of a full month. The add money behaves a little differently. Which, let me see. So if we're at just shy of 50 million, this is a workbench, and we add 50,000, it takes us to an even integer. I'm not sure where this plus 100 is coming from. That's usually not there. Other features here, custom message. This is how a lot of people do introduction messages, the little alerts that come up at the bottom in both games. Change the text color. This is just the icon that will appear on the left, and they take you to whatever normally it would take you to, like the rides menu. I think This one's finance. This one won't show anything and won't take you anywhere. This opens the scenery menu, that kind of thing. This will clear everything. You have no messages. And that's self-explanatory. So for use money, you can use this in conjunction with the scenario editor to apply money to an objective that normally would not allow it, or remove it from one that normally requires it. For instance, the maintain park rating objectives, and the add and subtract are also do exactly what they say they do. The thing to note is they will add up until the next major round number. It's based on the order of magnitude of whatever you're adding. So like there, even though we were, I don't know, 100 or so shy of the 50 million, adding 50,000 just took us to 50 million. From there, if we added another, it would be 50 million and 50,000. Weather, you can control, well, the weather. There's only 6 states, and normally if you're just working in a workbench state, you probably just want to change it to be sunny and freeze it and leave it there. And that will be frozen until you next either restart the trainer or restart the game. And cycle weather, I think, is meant to be a counter to freeze, but it's just a check system, so there's no need for it. The landscape, I've never used these, but I have a rough idea of what they would do. You can use a BMP file with certain pixels painted certain color combinations, and that corresponds to land textures within the game, and you can have it load that way. It may also store information of the height and probably the vertical faces of a respective tile. I've never seen a need to use this, however. Cap land at max height is very useful if you get sort of an endless pillar. There's not really an official name for it. Every once in a while, if you do a lot of memory editing with 8 cars, you can run into an issue where you'll have sort of an infinite land spike somewhere in the park, and you can't actually lower it because the game doesn't see a top. And by using landscape cap land at max height, it will remove the infinite nature, and you can lower it normally with the land tools. Adjust land mover size is actually incredibly useful, since especially in RCT2, you can't go down to the mountain tool, which is considered 0 size, and you can't go past 5. But when I'm doing rough landscapes, I always like to start at, I don't know, 15 or 20, which makes things go faster. You can't actually go up from here, but you can. If you do go up, it resets to 5, but you can go down from there in single increments. And if we use the mountain tool here, so you just sets it to 0, and that's how we get the mountain tool. Next feature is invisible border. I'm not sure if this refers to an invisible border on a land tile or an invisible border on the map. I'm thinking it has to do with a corrupted land tile, though. In the staff section, we have all of these groups. Researcher, as far as I know, has always been blank. And a lot of these features are missing from 1.21. So in advertising, this, I believe, changes guests' preferences. So they will prefer thrill rides, prefer gentle rides, or have a more evenly balanced ride preference. This does exactly what it says it does. Even this is really the only alternative to an ATM, since there aren't ATMs in RCT1. This does the same thing in 4 cars. If you're playing through legit, probably not something you want to mess with because it makes it pretty easy. This also does exactly what it says it does. I don't know how it chooses what to give them exactly. Perhaps it's just random, but it will put a food or drink item in the hand of every guest. This will correct all guests' happinesses to, I think, either of the top 2 states, or could just probably add some set amount to their happiness bar, and this will give guests randomly colored balloons. Hey RCM88X, aren't you Maverick or Mavericks, I want to say? And I've seen you around a lot, but I can't remember who you are. Okay, in first aid we have, this will reset the nausea meter on guests. G-force, that's right. And vitalize will restore their energy. Handyman, empty all the trash cans, water all the gardens. This is really nice if you have done a sandbox park and don't have staff, or just have gardens everywhere and don't want to drop handyman all over the place. You just water the gardens before you post the file, and then they stay nice and pretty for probably about an in-game month or so while you have people looking around your park. Mow grass will correct all the weeds and things that grow, either just to plain, which is what you would get if you opened the landscaping options and just clicked, or stripes, which is what handymen love to do in RCT1. Clean paths, this actually works very, very well, and so does repair vandalism. It does exactly the opposite of where'd it go? Vandalize park. The handyman setting cannot repair all rides, sadly, but can reset the time they were built, which will reset their popularity, which can make it so you don't have to lower ride costs over time to keep guests interested. And this will reset the reliability from anything to 99 or 100%. However, this won't really correct for rides that instantly break down all the time, like some of the more exaggerated hacks. You will need a separate utility called RCT2 Reliable for that. The park guide options are sending guests that have to use the restroom to nearest one, giving park maps to every guest, or giving umbrellas to every guest. I've never seen the need to use any of these. Security Pacify Vandals, I believe, just corrects the happiness from the flashing red on red-faced guests to some setting higher than that, just so that they won't break anything in their path anymore. And staff speed is actually incredibly useful. Just set them to fast and they move around like crazy and get everything done way, way faster. Very, very nice. And fire all would be self-explanatory, but it's not implemented, sadly. The edit ride stats, or edit rides menu, is very, very comprehensive and has tons of options that are very, very useful, and we will come back to this. This is where it will list all rides, including shops and stalls in the park. Here we see it cap about 254, where 8 cars can actually only count up to maybe it is 254. I forget how the bits work exactly. Here we have the same kind of mechanic actions, but we can do it on a specific targeted ride. I've never seen a downside to just doing it through the staff menu. These special actions will only apply to what's selected over here. So I'll get more into detail in this with an example in a little bit. Barry will put land to the nearest height clearance above each piece of track or the ride itself if it's a flat ride. Excavate will do the opposite. It'll bring the land to the highest possible value while still being beneath the lowest clearance. Zero clearance will make all parts of that ride have zero clearances. It's like a standard zero clearance, but it only applies to a single object. This would be editable. It will list the default state of whatever ride you've selected, as will this. But these can be changed with some interesting effects to something else without breaking the game. Operating mode is also something we mess around with quite a bit for merged and hacked rides. Color scheme, this is very useful for these special actions where you paint the track that you want to modify a certain alternative color scheme, and then it will apply those actions only to that color scheme. And station entries, messing with this is kind of dangerous and I advise against it. Usually 8 cars doesn't like to mess with ride stations. That's a good way to break the game. Height offset for raise and lower, which is this action. This is important if you ever have this checked. You need to have this at some non-zero value or else nothing happens. Number of circuits, these are all settings that are usually within the ride options somewhere, but if you want to go above and beyond what's normally allowed, it can be done with this for a lot of things. The age can also be reset here, but that again does the same thing as renew or through the mechanics staff menu. This is also a good way to get 8 cars per train if that's something you're after. For instance, with the B&M flying coaster. Unfortunately, it doesn't work with things like the floorless coaster and the stand-up coaster, I want to say. Another option to get 8 cars, although it doesn't seem to work as well, is this selection here, 8 cars per train. 10-minute inspections just reduces the inspection time of every ride to 10 minutes. This is a good thing to get in the habit of doing anyway, without the trainer. Just every time you make a ride, go into the settings and reduce its inspection time to 10 minutes. If you have mechanics set to patrol the path right outside, it shouldn't be a problem. And uniform item pricing, I believe, just checks the boxes to make all prices the same at shops of the same type. It doesn't make all prices the same for everything. Any height construction just removes the height limits. 10-foot shops reduces the upper clearance level of every stall placed on the map. It does not affect stalls placed after using this, to 2 units or 10 feet, which can be very useful if you don't want to use zero clearance. But you can still get clipping issues with this, so you have to pay attention. Ultra exciting, ultra intense, and ultra nauseating. These have some weird effects, and it's probably not whatever you were hoping to do. If you want to edit the stats directly, there's another trainer called Son of Beast, which I have here. If it loads. And in this rides menu, we can actually manipulate all stats individually to the hundredths place. So this is a better option if you want to do that. So that does it for the rides section and guests. This presumably would be the options menu that you get at the end of the scenario editor, where you adjust guest preferences. However, it doesn't seem to have been implemented. Trams add a large number of guests all at once to the guest generation, but it adheres to the same rules that normal guest generation does, which means if your park at its given size is already full, or is the game thinks it's at its capacity, it won't do anything. If you've just done a huge expansion, though, the size that the game thinks your park is goes up, and it will increase the guest generation naturally. And so at that time, using a tram will have much more of an impact. And the small, medium, large, and huge are just, maximum, minimum, or somewhere in between, whatever the allowed guest generation amount is. Remove all guests does exactly what it says it does, except for golfers, I think. There's a little message that pops up. I'm not sure why there's a limitation on that. Resetting guest numbers. If you have this setting unchecked, where it labels them by number instead of by name, it will reset the count to 1 for future guests. If you are anal about that kind of thing, then in some scenarios the guest count starts in the hundreds or thousands. You can reset it to 1 if you want. All around guests, I think, just edits their preferences to not have an intensity preference that's high or low. And freeze guest movement sadly doesn't work. There is freezing staff, though, here, which if you've participated in or looked at head-to-head parks, probably seen quite a bit of. In the debug tab, we have sort map elements internally. If the game just seems to be behaving strangely, this is usually something good to try. It's not necessarily guaranteed to fix anything, but it can help. Not sure exactly what it does, maybe just rearranges how some of the memory is stored. And eliminating duplicate surface data. no idea what this does, never used it. In miscellaneous, we have remove floating objects, which I think is something that's been placed and should be at ground, like should be required to be placed at ground level, but for whatever reason is not. It's not just objects that have been shift raised. Like for instance, that's off the ground and we do this. Hasn't actually removed that, so it does. It's some other debugging feature. Yeah, ducks and floating text. Okay. Now, zero clearances are probably the sort of big one, the important one that is recommended a lot and is kind of a good place to start for people that are getting more serious about creative play. What this does is all objects and all rides and everything in the game has a set bottom and top clearance, which determines... Okay, so eliminating duplicate surface data helps with black holes and land spikes. Interesting, I've only ever seen the cap land at max height to deal with a land spike. But the black holes, that does make sense. Anyway, so zeroing clearances sets the base and top clearance of all objects both to 0, which means that you are not barred from placing objects anywhere in relation to objects that have been placed before doing this. So if you have trees or path or rides and 0 clearances, you can now place objects inside those clearance zones. This is important for doing underbrush. Especially the modern way of doing paths is with path objects and then invisible path on top of that. So placing path lining where you outline the curves is pretty popular, or if you want to place quarter tile blocks, columns, footers, anything else that would normally be disrupted by the presence of a path object can be gotten around using this. Absolute is everything goes to 0. Relative doesn't really seem to work for anything ever, so I've just always done absolute. And then the important thing is every time you're done, restore clearances. You definitely do not want to save a game while clearances are zeroed out. And this is one of the things that breaks quite badly with 1.302, or sorry, 1.32. This is 1.302. It doesn't seem to restore clearances properly, so that's a big issue. And map object manipulation is another big, very powerful tool. What this essentially lets you do is pick out exactly which objects on which tile you want and modify them in some way, as the name would suggest. Usually what we will use this for is, a demonstration I'll do is to create a dummy station, not a dummy station, a storage track with a train sitting in it. That project is long dead. Sorry about that, but I don't even know if I still have that save file. So what will happen there is we'll have a station with the train on it. We will place the entrance and exit for that station so that we can... Okay. It could be my bitrate is too high for your download, and it could also just be Twitch being terrible. But anyway, so you'll have the entrance and exit. You will modify the ride to be able to load a train without having any kind of circuit. You close it immediately, and then you use map object manipulation to turn the entrance and exit invisible, and I'll show you how to do that. And these are all just the selections that will help you specify exactly what you're looking for, including down to a height range, if need be. And I'm going to go ahead and restart the stream real quick with a slightly lower bitrate and see if that... So GeForce, hopefully this is better. You'll have to let me know. So the first thing I wanted to do to actually demonstrate is do a simple ride merge. which will heavily involve the Edit Rides menu. And I haven't actually put any thought into this before starting, so let's... Alright, let's just merge something like this to a steel twister track, so that we can have some of the bigger elements to play with. So you see I start by placing the station for the ride I want the train of, which in this case is the steel looping coaster. And then I'm going to have it drop out of the station and then go up to a lift. So if we start that track separately at this level, one very important aspect of merging is that the merging tracks must be exactly identical at the point where the merge takes place, including facing the same direction. So notice here I've built this, which is the track that will generate our train and allow guests to load. The track tile where I want to transition is here, and the track I'm going from is above the track I'm going to. And in this case it's by 3 units, and that will be something we will have to remember for later. And we can quickly build something. Let's go a little bit lower first. That would be a little fast. That should be okay. So GeForce, if you can still see the stream, let me know if that improved anything. Okay, good. Yeah, I do like my solar fields as well as my carbon-based life forms. Hello, Faker Plays, Skarner, and Scrooge. How are you guys? So as we're coming up to the end, something important to note is it doesn't actually matter which track the brakes are on. Block brakes will not work, but regular brakes will behave the same across all track types. So would have been too fast. Yeah, so this is something I talked about. I tried to talk about last week in very great detail. Is the way RCT handles speeds. Earlier on, you have much taller elements, larger elements, and so the amount of friction loss between them is going to be greater than later in the layout. So a good average to consider is that in the middle or so of a layout, each hill should be 4 units or about 20 feet below the previous hill. Earlier on in the layout, it should be a bit larger than that, so maybe up to 6 units or 30 feet. Later on in the layout, the difference can come down, and you can have hills that are only 5 or 10 feet apart, or even the same height over a given section, like, you know, bunny hills at the end of a ride or something, because the elements are so close together, the train's not losing that much friction between them. So I think this will be a good speed. Maybe a tad bit slow, but I think it'll be okay. This is just This is just to demonstrate the merge, not to demonstrate the actual ride. And before we complete this, so if we want this to run with 2 trains and 7 cars per train, you can plainly see that's not going to fit in this station right now. And if it extends out the back, there's going to be some serious issues, because this track knows that it's only got 1 piece of track off this side and 1 piece of track off this side. And so the trains will, or the cars will bunch up there at the end, and it just won't work. So we have to make the station long enough to accommodate everything. So hopefully that will be enough. In fact, we should probably check that before we finish this merge. So what we're going to do is name this, let's call this station. And we're going to change the color scheme of what we're going to be lowering. It doesn't matter what it is, doesn't even have to be different than the rest of the track, but it does help you remind yourself what exactly you're modifying, and that from earlier, of course. So what we've done is we've painted alternate color scheme 1 on this piece of track, and we're going to lower that 3 units. So we go to Edit Rides menu, first entry is station, raised lower, alternative number 1, which is the color scheme we painted, and -3. These are in units, not feet. In the original RCT, I believe 2 of these is 1 in-game unit. I'm not sure why that conversion exists, but a little bit of playing around with it will get you there. So we've done that. So that looks good. But this is still in continuous circuit mode, which isn't going to do us any favors, because if we try and run it, it's not a complete circuit, it's not happy with us. So what we have to do is change its operating mode. Uncheck raise and lower, because we do not want to modify that anymore. And change the operating mode to, we can do powered launch, but this will reduce us to 1 train, and there's no way around that. Well, prove it, Gizja Boss. What I like to use is boat hire, because it will not impact the starting speed, it will not impact the lift speed, and it will not constrain the number of trains that you can use. So change that to boat hire, and let's change this to 5 just to be on the safe side with 2. Okay, so we can easily fit 2 more cars in here, so we'll change this to 6. And so that should be fine. Well, you're gonna have to post some screenshots, because I don't know exactly what you're talking about. So now that we know that that's not going to be a problem, we can make this merge. And while I'm doing this, you guys should suggest colors for this. It'll be fun to change at the end. Okay, so we're going to lower that. Simply the next entry in our Edit Rides menu. When you have a park full of stuff, this can be a little hard to keep track of, but just scrolling through this is not that hard, thankfully. And this one was only 2 units high, if you notice, so we're only going to do that and nothing else needs to be changed. And okay, go back in, and that's fine. And now I'm just going to add some brakes here at the end. 22, 18, 13, 9. Okay. Yellow track, red rail, silver supports. That? Sort of silver bullet-esque. You don't have to change this since no one will ever see it, but I like to make it blend in up here. And if you ever have mechanics in your park, you're going to want to set these to never, since there's no station for them to inspect. Now let me check this out. Yes, that's a good point, G-Force. Using 8Car's Edit 1.32's Edit Ride menu is nice because it does show the name of the rides. It's also good for some other things, but for general use, I like to recommend 1.302. I do agree that the dive loop looks a little strange. You have that really, really, really big lead up to it. Maybe if you had a steep hill into the dive loop and then had the loop on the inside of that little turn going over the lift, that might look a little better. Keep it from being quite so spread out. That's fine, Scrooge. You're fine. Where were we? Train colors. Okay. I like to just have the lift speed as fast as possible. We can go faster than this too. So we see this listed as boat hire mode. It's actually not one of the choices, and if you change it, it will change. Boat hire mode will no longer be an option. You have to do it with 8 cars again. But let's see if the merge worked. Well, it's the very, very long sort of 20-25 degree incline that makes it look awkward too. And let's send the other train out just for giggles. The ideal speed at the top of a given element is in the neighborhood of 30 miles an hour. So at 20, that's just a hair slow. Like I said it would be, but that's okay. Nice airtime hill and a loop. And into the brakes. And let's see if it makes it over this one too. And it does. We all go through phases like that, Giz Boss. Trust me. So, works fine. Add some paths so the game doesn't yell at us. And we'll let that run. The next thing I wanted to demonstrate was the storage track, and then I'm going to come back and do a slightly more complex example of a merge, which I think will be a lot of fun. Okay, I'm back, and let's get back into RCT. So, to build a storage track, first you have to consider what makes sense spatially. Here, putting it on this side is probably not very smart, seeing as your only 2 options are to transition sideways and then deposit the trains here alongside the station. It's going to make building the station pretty unwieldy. You also then have to enter and exit on the same side, which is really uncommon. What's more common is to transfer to one side and then back. Usually with 2 storage tracks or even 3 on modern B&M roller coasters. And so transferring this way and back isn't really an option because it's going to run into the tracks. We're going to have to transfer this way and back. And the way we're going to do that, because remember we want one of these trains to sit there and look like it's actually being stored. So we need the train type that we want to use. And then we need to consider how long the train is, and thus how many tiles it's going to take up. So we see here goes to about this tile, which means it's the transfer track will need to be 4 units long, which means the storage track can sit right behind it. I do have a YouTube channel, and that is where I upload the VODs of these weekly streams. I can link it in a little bit. Make sure we're height matched. I think that's actually not going to let us do 6. Yeah, that's going to cap us at 5. So we need to make it 1 longer. Okay, and we are going to need an entrance and an exit. Oh, they're ugly, but we deal with it for now. And the track color, is not going to make a difference because eventually it's going to magically disappear. What does matter is the train colors. So we're going to pick something inconspicuous like that, there, white and red. Perfect. Make this the same so it looks like it belongs. Again, change this to never since it won't be accessible. And no other modifications need to be done to this. in the game. But back in the Edit Rides menu, we need to change this new thing. See, we haven't given it a name, so sometimes it shows up blank. That's why even if you just go around and name things, you know, dummy, or how about here, we'll call this storage train, because the only thing that will be clickable is the train itself, and the storage track will come a little later. So here we go, we have the train. We need to set it to boat hire mode. Powered launch is also okay, but need to be a little quick on the finger. Open, close. So now this is going to sit here, and this is where 1.32 is going to become important. So let's go ahead and open that. And the next step is to remove the entrance and exit, or at least make them invisible. So what we're going to do is get some full tile objects. What do we have here? Let's use these. Now I cannot personally explain to you the exact voodoo by which this works, but it does work. GWiz has explained it in detail in a thread on a new element. It has to do with editing the hex code in the memory and glorious strange things like that. Oh, another very important thing we need is an invisible support blocker. Wow, okay, I'm really dumb. I forgot something very, very basic about how stations behave. So making the track invisible is not actually done with this. That's a different step. I'm getting confused. That's why I built the dive coaster track. That would have been made invisible, and that's part of what... Okay, that's what you meant. So we can still do this. And I'll explain hopefully everything that I was confusing myself with. So we place the full tile objects, those are important. This dummy track is also important. It can be any color. And what we're going to do is go into map object manipulation, paint the tiles underneath this something obvious, in this case red grid. Now what we want to do is raise and lower the land. Height offset, you can use anything for this, you can just subtract the same amount eventually. We'll use 120, and red grid, so this will raise all red grid 120 units. And so we get this stack of land, and what we build now is going to set the cap on what objects are going to be made invisible on this tile. In our case, we want the entrance and exit hut to be made invisible. Unfortunately, whatever object we place here is still going to show up. That's why you normally use an invisible support blocker. I do not have that, and I'm not going to waste everyone on the stream's time importing one. So it's going to look a little strange, but we'll manage. Next important thing is to now go into 1.32, find the dummy station, make this invisible on main color scheme, and then go back into map object manipulation and subtract the exact same amount with the exact same selections, land, red grid. That looks better. Okay. Paint that, no one will ever know the difference. And now to get rid of this, the crucial step is not in here, but in the standard edit rides menu. Here's our storage train. We are changing the track type. Is it track type to Crooked House or operating mode to Crooked House? We're going to find out together. Crooked House mode? Nope, it's the track type. Okay. So we're going to put this back to boat hire so we don't break anything. Yeah. It's It's been a long time since I've done this. There we go. And I will save. So now we have our storage train floating in space. And to put something underneath it, we're going to pick the same track type that we normally use. If you hadn't merged, this would be pretty straightforward. But here we're going to... I think the chain looks a little more like the attachments on the track that they use to hold a train in place as they work on it. We're going to remember the height that it's at and the tile that it starts on. So this is obviously not going to let us build through here normally, and if we build through here we're going to run into the station. And it's also important to build backwards, or else if you try to overlap two of the exact same type of pieces going the same direction, you can just delete the data, and with something like this that's probably just going to error trap you. So we go back into zero clearance with 1.302, not 1.32. And this one. Restore clearances, fix the colors, or maybe just, change it to gray. Depends on what you want to go for. This shouldn't really be that obvious anyway. Probably cover it with something. But now we're gonna go up here and see that these objects are still floating here, and I wouldn't advise deleting them. But normally you would have a support blocker that's invisible, and you don't have that problem. But here we go. We have our storage tracks with apparently, or something that appears to function. And you can fill this in with whatever you want. The clearances will behave a little strangely because you've changed the track type, but nothing zero clearance can't solve. And of course, anything else you want to build on this tile is probably going to need zero clearances. Now for the actual transfer mechanism, there are a bunch of different ways you can do this. It's really up to personal preference and what you might think looks unique. The steeplechase, anything single rail, basically, usually looks good. I like to use this, and really all you're trying to do with this is make it look like a sturdy mechanism that would be moving the train back and forth. Just do something like that. And how long did we decide it is? 5. 1, 2, 3. And we'll probably want one more in the middle. Make sure it goes over all the way, of course. To get rid of these, normally you'd use a support blocker. Don't have that luxury, so we're going to get around it somehow. This is a good choice. Anything that blocks supports is generally okay. Like any of these would be fine. But you do have to think about how these objects will be visible through the ground. So make them darkly colored. Use the raise land trick. And now we've got tracks to bring this over. That's all black, doesn't matter. Change it to never inspect. And then how you support this is another matter of personal preference. It's one of those things that you're really just representing in the game, not actually building. So, hell, even something like something like this might be okay. Build some kind of catwalk structure around it to let presumably the mechanics get back and forth. You're probably going to want to build something that looks a little bit sturdier, more substantial. Maybe build in the corners or build in this whole area. Oops. Something like that. And there are catwalk objects. You can also use this and lower it in via the same means. In fact, why don't I just do that? So I have a strange feature where my 13-mile-per-hour brake segments are infinitely tall. Not sure why that exists. One interesting feature of merged rides is that once that leaves, we can do this. And as long as it's finished in time, there won't be any issues. We're going to go ahead and keep building that. And we want catwalk all the way up to lift, of course. One important thing to note is there's a 4-unit difference here and a 2-unit difference here. Those will have to be done separately. It's very, very important. So I'm going to paint one section, one alternative color. We'll change colors to make sure. Yep, all changed. So alternative 1 is going to be lowered 2 units. Alternative main is going to be lowered 4. Go back into Edit Rides menu. Where are we? Here's our catwalks. So alternative 1 down 2, main down 4. And let's make it vaguely catwalk colored. This is another one of those things that because it has no way to be inspected, you're probably going to change the inspection times to never. So it'll glitch a little bit, but you have catwalks, and you can remove all of these supports via the same method. And this Pro Tour 2 bench has some pretty old school quarter tile capped and flange supports, which are pretty fun, but not really the focus right now, so I'm not going to get into that too much. But this is pretty common in modern high-end parks. I do this with any of my major designs, and it's a pretty neat little trick. It doesn't take too long once you remember how to do it, of course. Hey, Ket and Hines. I'm just talking about storage tracks. Yeah, Stradarva. So the next thing I want to try out, resave this, is show how to do a merge on a powered launch coaster that is not a complete circuit. So in this case, the train has to pass both directions on the merge. I haven't done this in like 3 years, so if we crash a few times, it's going to be okay, I promise. But we're going to start with the base LIM trains. Probably just 6 is fine. And now we're going to do the actual layout. Let's make a Mr. Freeze ripoff. Oops. Let's go down a little more. Maybe have one more. My summer is long since over. This last week was insane. And we'll call this Stop Hat. Since it's not Mr. Freeze, we're not going to make it blue. We're going to make it purple. I'm also not talking very much because I just really, really like this song. Okay, now the direction of merges here is very important. So, as with before, the track you're merging from needs to have its merge piece above the track you're merging onto. That means at this point, it's going from here to this. The next piece, pull this out of the way, is going to have to be this height. Shut up, Gitch DeVos. I said it's not Mr. Freeze. It's okay that it's a B&M because it's not Mr. Freeze. So this will take care of the merge going one direction. But when it comes back, it needs to do the exact opposite. It needs to go from this over onto this. Oops. Go back and clear that. Oh, that's bad. Track gymnastics is a very useful skill. Okay. Bring this down to 20 feet. No, it's not. I said it's not, therefore it's not. Don't judge me. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to... we probably should have built this and tested it first. Oh well. Next thing to do is to use our alternative color schemes. Go back to our Edit Rides menu. Find not Mr. Freeze. -2 on alternative 1. Powered launch no station pass is exactly what we want. And on top hat, same exact stuff, not modifying anything else. And we change the alternative color schemes to look exactly the same as the rest of the track. I don't think so, Ostrodarva. Every example I can think of has a standard out and back layout. Seems like more of an Intamin Mac kind of thing to do. Anyway. So because this is enormous, it's going to require a ton of speed. We're going to overestimate, hopefully. If we need more speed than that, we're going to have to do that with a trainer too. And let's see if I remember how to merge correctly. Got one direction. That's probably a little excessive, but should be okay. Another thing we can probably do... Yep, it's not going to make it. Okay. So we're going to have to give it more speed. We can, we could put in chainless sections here and then up the chainless speed by quite a bit, but that will also kill its reverse speed, and so we don't really gain any ground by doing that. So what we're going to do, uncheck all these things, go back to not Mr. Freeze, change the launch speed to, say, 76. Hopefully that will give us enough to get back. That is way, way too fast, but probably gonna need it. Oh, it still can't make it. It's a disaster. Going 80. Oh dear. It's dangerously close. Oh, please make it. Okay, good enough. And our merging skills are successful. Okay. And it's already broken down. That's probably a result of the launch speeds. But there are other things we can do to get around that. We can make the top hat significantly shorter. We can cut this down quite a bit, and that will, of course, the faster it's going, the more ground it's covering, the more speed it's losing to friction. But yes. So the great thing about the edit rides menu is you have control over. See, this is the looping roller coaster that we started with, the yellow one in the background, and so we can change its operating mode to whatever we want. We can put it in the powered launch mode that we're currently using on the LIM coaster, and then we can modify its launch speed, and we can put in any number we want. The game has a little bit of trouble doing instantaneous acceleration, because when you're leaving a station, it still has to go from 0 to some amount by the time the train leaves. Yeah, but what the merging is doing is you're taking one train type. Let's skip this because there's words. Okay, taking one train type, putting it on a track type that it normally does not belong to, and then you get all the benefits of using that specific track type. In this case, we have we get to use the large flat to slope pieces, and everything else is available with the LIM coaster. We should probably let a mechanic fix this, and then we can mess with it a little bit more. Try and get it into a state where it's not constantly breaking down. That's a problem. That way they can't talk to each other. And so this is broken down. We normally wouldn't be able to mess with it, but because it's on a merged ride and all of our changes are going to be here, it should be fine. One thing I'm going to do is bring well, this is a good length for it, but I'm going to shorten up the top hat quite a bit. And actually, this is pretty much all I wanted to talk about. So I'm now totally open to questions and demonstrate anything further, expand upon anything, mess with anything, whatever you guys want to do. That's much better. And with the launch speed here, it won't break down quite as often. See, it's going down rapidly, but it's not setting itself to 0 instantly, which is improvement. And stuff like that. I mean, what is this at? So it's at 96, it'll be 95 in a second. We can reset it with 8 cars periodically, or you can run RCT2 reliable alongside, which is another utility. So the thing about dummy stations is I've been looking for a good guide for them for a very long time. I don't feel like I have that great of a grasp of them. I understand the basic concept where, for instance, you actually load somewhere like this. Let's pick something else. So if I recall, what you end up doing is merging onto a different track and then erasing the merge, basically. You reconnect it. So what you can do with the dummy station is have guests load in one place, but actually get on a ride in a different place. So in this case, for instance, they would load down here, but then actually the real ride station, which... oh, I don't know. Let's do something basic. Oh, you don't need huts for the dummy station, okay. Yes, it's incredibly useful for raft rides, because with raft rides in rail parks, you have that sort of circular spinning loading station. It doesn't work in RCT, but you can set it up with a dummy station such that guests enter and exit the ride in that you don't need to merge. How could you do it with how would you get it onto the other track without merging? Wouldn't that just replace it and not complete the circuit, which is what you needed to do? Must be the same, but can be in any direction. Okay, interesting. I'm just trying to make this long enough so that when the trains pass over, they don't... I'm going to need time to fix this while they're out on this layout so that they return to this station. Okay, I'm going to try it with the merge, and then if I'm understanding you correctly and this doesn't work, we'll try that next. This is going to line up almost somewhere. Let's bring you down. I'm trying to remember if this circuit needs to be completed or not. I don't think it does. Okay, so we're going to change the twister coaster to boat hire. Should be this one. Operating mode, boat hire. Number trains 3, cars 8, okay. That all looks good. And now we will, those all look fine. Complete the merge. This should have already been done, but just to make sure. Let's see if it works. Probably save first, huh? Now that I think about it, doing this with 3 trains is probably going to be cutting a little bit close. So off goes that one. Okay. Seems to have worked. And then normally at this stage you would make what is this? 3. I wonder if we can just set it to Crooked House. While it's running, this might be risky. Yep. Let's be 18. Do you just mean the wide turns? Yeah, that would do it. Yeah, in here. Okay, well, let's mess with that real quick. Let's try and make it invisible again. There we go. Track type, Crooked House. Yep, there we go. Yeah, it was the 2-part turns that screwed me. But there we go. It glitches a little bit on the station, but this can also be made invisible through the same tactic used over here for the storage train. With its entrance, the raise and lower trick. Same thing can be used to get rid of this, and then you can just build whatever you want in here backwards, obviously, because there's a track here. But so that's very interesting. This is the first dummy track I have ever done. Settings are probably a little excessive, but nope, you can definitely do this in RCT1. The only thing that you cannot do is this trick over here with the raise and lower, because invisible support blockers do not exist. But the dummy stations and merging both definitely work in RCT1. Another issue is this won't actually get its stats, those will have to be edited in separately. Delete any piece of the dummy track to generate ratings from the twister. It clearly is only measuring the stats from this station to this one. Wonder how's this one doing? You want to do that to have trains with more passengers on any type of track. Oh, okay, that's what you meant. Yeah, then these can be edited separately through something like Sunbeast, so thank you for that. But Kettenheinz, to address your question, that is one application of merging. I mean, if you can put any train type on any track type, you have a lot more control over every aspect of the ride. You can also put more trains or more cars per train than you would normally be allowed to have. One good example is the B&M flying coaster. It normally caps out at 7, which is kind of good in a way because each car is longer than in real life, so a 7-car train is enormous. 8 cars is a little unwieldy. But I mean, you can. The sky is kind of the limit when it comes to the edit rides menu. Anything you see in there can probably be done within reason. I mean, in terms of moving trains around, moving track around, merging and modifying trains and cars and things like that. It's a good thing to kind of just play around with, get a better feel for what's possible, and if there's something you want to try, I mean, just go for it. And if you run into issues, you can obviously post a lot of screenshots. Screenshots make things very easy, or much easier to diagnose. I think this is really cool. You have the station exit somewhere and the station completely somewhere else. Yes, I am, GeForce. It's got a really lame code name. It's Project Yellow. It's still pretty early. It's a design, and there's not really anything I'm trying to like. Usually, I have some kind of driving vision. Like with KSEC, it was messing with the white monorails as building materials for path and walls. And so that the very beginning of that project was just me building the station that eventually housed the coaster on that map. And I just liked it so much that I kept building. But I have a layout. I really like it. I'm trying to work out how I'm going to put path around it and just generally plan things out and set things up. But once it's a little further along, maybe when there's a little more to see, then just a layout and some terraforming, I might stream that one of these weeks. It doesn't look like this has necessarily done anything better for reliability than the merge. If anything, it's worse. It was just pushing the launch speed over 70 that killed it. But this is good to have done. Very informative. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go ahead and quit recording and kill the stream. And actually, I haven't played Broken Age yet. I promised my girlfriend that we would play through that together at some point, and I think we should do that. And then later tonight, I'll try and edit this and get it together and put it on that playlist I linked earlier. So, thank you for joining me, guys, and hopefully I will see you next Sunday. Have a good evening.